Thanks for tuning in, guys. So this is our fortnightly Q&A session where we chat about a general kind of WordPressy kind of topic. This time around, it's analytics. So let's just recap again who this is really aimed at. You're more likely somebody who's got a WordPress site, you're the business owner, or you're somebody tasked within the business to look after that WordPress site. So you're not a developer, you're not a designer, neither do you want to be. What you're aiming to do is to improve your skills and ultimately improve your website. And that's the purpose of this Facebook group. It's the purpose of the blog articles I put on there, and it's the purpose of these fortnightly sessions. So it's important to bear in mind as well, this session is very an informal thing. We'll keep it to about, let's keep an eye on the time, 30 minutes, maybe a little bit over. They're not designed to be a step-by-step guide to do things. I kind of reserve that for the more premium content. This is a little bit more informal, where we roughly try and cover a topic. If you get a chat, I do try and sort of post on the group regularly that if there's a specific question you want to answer about this topic, then you get plenty of time to drop that in the Facebook group leading up to this, or you might be able to ask during the show itself, because it does flash up on the screen. If I don't get a chance, if you ask a question and I don't notice, or I might need to do some research, don't worry, I will get back to you, because that's one of the beauties of the Facebook group, that I can actually see everything that goes on there. Right, what else do I need to mention? Oh, there is a link there somewhere for if that eCam link. If you click that, it just means that I can see who you are if you comment. And feel free to comment in the live posts on there, as it will flash up on the screen. Some of you will be watching this later on, because I know not everybody can turn up on time. That's completely fine. What I will do, as I normally do, is I'll edit this later on, and over the weekend I'll put it up as a blog post, and I'll mention any of the links which I discuss, and we can then maybe chat about that next week. Talking of next week, let's have a little look here. Let's go back to my notes. Yeah, let's talk of next week. Let's next Friday morning, before we move on to the actual main topic here, let's go on to the old screen share. Yada yada yada. Okay, so next Friday morning at 10:30. No, that's Helen's. Say, hey, never work with animals, children, or anything live, guys. Yeah, what I was meant to be trying to say there. Next Friday morning at 10:30, we've got the WordPress Refresher Workshop coming up. Now, that's not something that's going to be beamed live to this Facebook group, because that's a private premium session. That's £75 plus VAT. But that'll be a 1.5 hour Zoom session, where if you've lost a bit of confidence with looking after your WordPress site, or you got some questions which you want to fire at me in a controlled environment where I take you through a series of topics, then that'll be perfect for you. The aim of that session is really that you'll walk away much more confident with looking after your WordPress site, and much more confident with a plan going forward with what you're meant to be doing. So if you think you need that, please jump onto it. And if you get a chance next week, it would be great if you could share any of my posts about that, because that helps spread the love a little bit, guys. Spread the love. Good grief. Right, what else we got coming up? Yeah, do keep an eye on the website as well for any webinars, for any other. We've got quite a few webinars coming up. We've got an SEO one. We've got the great one with Sue Keogh, writing for the web, all in July. And I added one recently, this morning actually, the e-commerce one with another guy called Nick, actually. So we've got 2 Nicks coming up, which is really confusing. Okay, I don't want to prattle on too much, because we have got a topic we're meant to be speaking about. Oh, hang on, can I turn up? Yeah, look, let's see if I can get that camera working in a minute. Is that gonna work? Let's have a little look. Picture in picture. No, it's not. It decides not to work. That's fine. Ignore it. We are meant to be talking about analytics today, so let's have a little look here. So, yeah, maybe I'll go back to my main camera one minute. Right, so it used to be the case that installing, and actually let's go back even further, because I'm an old git at this whole web design thing. I existed in a time when we didn't have Google Analytics, that we used to do something called server-side log analysis, because on your web server, all the visits and the hits to the pages, they actually get stored in these rather dull logs, and you can process the logs to produce reports. But then in came Google Analytics. Well, it was actually a third-party service. Was it called Urchin? Yeah, called something else, and then Google bought them out. And that was much more of a friendly service to use. You just dropped in a bit of JavaScript, and then all of a sudden these these reports appeared showing all the stats. So it was a bit of a no-brainer just to drop that into a website. In short, I probably never even asked clients whether they needed it. It was a bit of, it was obvious that they were going to need it, and we would drop it into the website, because even if they weren't going to look at the data, the reports in Google Analytics immediately, the fact that it sat there running like a black box flight recorder, the fact that it sat there ticking over, just gives you reassurance that if you do want to then go back and look at data, it was sat there recording. Because the thing about Google Analytics, and probably like a lot of this software, it's not retrospective. If you've not put it on there for 2 years and then you suddenly put it on there, where's all that 2-year data gone? It doesn't exist, of course. It didn't record it. So it used to be a no-brainer that we would put that on the site. However, that's not the case now. We live in a slightly different world now, where privacy is much more to the forefront. And whilst Google Analytics doesn't store credit card details, the laws surrounding privacy, which vary greatly between country and country, anything about tracking personally identifiable data does cause privacy concerns. And depending on the legal advice you get, because a web design company can't give legal advice on whether you need to do this or not. We can implement recommendations, but depending on the advice you get, they may say that you need to have a cookie banner which largely displays on your website before Google Analytics even ever tracks. Well, that causes some people problems, because a lot of people just want to quite rightly opt out of those banners. There are some interpretations of how you can anonymize some of the data within Google Analytics to try and get around some of those issues. People like the Information Commissioner, they don't really give you much guidance on this, which is why I will put my hands up and say, look, speak to specialist legal advice and we will implement what they say. I think you gather from that it's no longer an easy decision just to blindly put Google Analytics on the website. That's very much up to what the client wants, and there are legal ramifications for that. There are other very important ramifications as well, stuff which we probably didn't think about a couple of years ago. One thing would be performance. Google Analytics is a little bit of JavaScript. If you don't know what JavaScript is, it's a programming language, basically a very powerful programming language nowadays. And lots of plugins in WordPress and lots of services like Opt-in Monster or HubSpot or ActiveCampaign, the list goes on, Crazy Egg. All of these things say, hey, just drop this bit of script into the website and everything starts working, and everything does start working. The problem is all of these scripts add to the performance burden of your website. Maybe one script on its own doesn't necessarily cause you massive problems, but over time, they do. And it isn't just a cumulative thing, because they can interrupt how the web page draws itself when it first loads. And Google are really, really cracking down on this. And in fact, I got a blog post coming out soon about some changes which Google are doing. And to be honest, I'm happy with it, because this is going to lead us to a situation where a lot of websites have got to be stripped back, and we've got to question why we need this these Google Analytics, those scripts which Google Analytics is on websites, trying to create more leaner experiences and ones without pop-ups and things making everything slow. So what you're seeing there really is that some companies are quite rightly saying, no, actually, we won't put Google Analytics in there. We'll find some other kind of website tracking, and we can look at those in a moment. And I think that's a very fair enough decision to make. Another angle, to be honest, guys, is this. A lot of, we've worked with big companies and small companies, very high traffic companies and, small traffic companies. And if you're a small B2B consultancy, then you might get very little traffic. That's not to say the website's irrelevant, because let's say you get 100 visitors a month and let's say 50 of those visitors are roughly from your target audience. Let's say 5 are roughly interested, and let's say one a month goes on to become a customer. That's all really valuable stuff. But when there's not much data running through Google Analytics, I'm not sure if it's going to really add much value in terms of reporting and tracking, because you know how you're going about your work. So if you've not looked at Google Analytics for years, then I think you want to be asking yourself, do I even want it running on the website? Because getting rid of it will get rid of my privacy concern of it, and it'll get rid of certain issues in terms of performance. Right. So let's have a quick look at some alternatives. One thing. Oh, hang on, hey, Joe, share the screen, man. What are you playing at? Right. One thing you can look at. There is a plugin for WordPress called Jetpack. Jetpack is written by Automatic. Automatic is actually the company who runs WordPress.com, which is the hosted, managed version of WordPress. So it's a very, very good plugin. And it's a plugin which contains a load of different facilities. One of them is the fact that it'll give you stats and insights. So these stats alone, and to be honest, I think these stats, you're looking at them here, you're looking at them from my site, and I can see top pages and posts, and it's looking at it for a certain day. So for a lot of people, these basic stats may well be enough, So that's not to say that if you dump Google Analytics, you haven't got any stats. No, you can have these, and these tend to be available directly within. There's like a little widget within WordPress. So that's very useful. I tell you what, as well, those WordPress stats, we like to have that running even if we've got Google Analytics, because it's nice to have a backup to see where the trends are. Stats software will never ever line up. They've all got different ideas of what a session is, what a user is, what multiple sessions are. So the numbers will never line up. But we have seen instances where, for instance, somebody's come along and they've snarled up Google Analytics, because remember, it's a script. Remember I said you could have multiple scripts running on a website, or sometimes people put multiple versions of Google Analytics on there, and that can screw things up. So if all of a sudden your Google Analytics data goes screwy, you've then got, say, the WordPress Jetpack stats just to compare that to, just for an overall trend. So that can be useful. Right, what do I want to show you as well? Let's have a quick, now, and I'll put this as a link within the blog post, because we're not going to spend much time on it here. I did mention about privacy concerns in terms of Google Analytics. There are lots of other services out there. This is one called Fathom, which is a much more of a privacy-focused website analytics software, probably built up from the ground up, being privacy aware. And I'm assuming they are privacy aware, because, if I was going to do that in an incognito, but I think I might screw up my screen sharing. But the fact that it didn't come up with a big sort of cookie banner, etc., would imply to me that they don't need it for that. So there are alternatives. So if you're sat there thinking, oh yeah, I really like Google Analytics, I don't like the privacy concerns, what are the other options available? There is this Fathom one, and I will drop the link in later on. However, that aside, let's briefly look into, oh, am I on the right screen? Hey, come on, Joe, wake up, man, wake up. Let's have a little look in Google Analytics. Now here, where Google have got this example store, and if I can remember the link for it, I will drop that into the post as well. They've got an example store, so you can see lots of data. and it's a good place to maybe have a look around and to see different reports, especially on a website which is high traffic, because I would look at my site here, but it's that's fairly high traffic, not as high traffic as this, but this gives us a bit more of a common set of data. Now, an issue right away with Google Analytics is that, my God, can it be overwhelming? Google Analytics has sprawled and got bigger and wider over time, and it's I'm just remembering how to zoom in. There's a lot there, so this probably explains why a lot of people don't actually go into Google Analytics, because it's overwhelming when they get there. So I do want to show you a couple of tricks which can help there. Okay, right, for one thing, I'm just going to go to one section which I always quite like. Let's go to, I'm already on it, of course, all pages. This report says, okay, let's just look at the most popular pages across the whole website and rank them in order. Maybe I will try and zoom in a little bit here. Oh, it's a bit too zoomed-y. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. So here we've got store HTML is the top one. Home is the next one. It's funny, guys, to be honest, because the home page is normally the top one. And on your site, you might just see home as the /. Okay? These things can be kind of customized. So that's what you're seeing here. So this is always a very, very useful report to look at. Okay. I was doing an SEO, a simple one-to-one session where we were talking about SEO with somebody earlier this week. And we were looking at opportunities on some of their blog pages. Now they have, no, not blog pages, it was product pages it was. So again, it's a similar story to this. And the opportunities unearthed would, like a lot of the case in these scenarios, would involve a lot of work going back over all of the pages to improve them. So if that's the case and you realize that this is going to take time to go over everything and to improve it, the natural question then to ask yourself is, where do I start? What is my order of priority? Well, look, if you're going to look at pages within your site, why don't you start by looking at the top pages? Now, this report as well, you can filter here. So I should be able to, look, I can see we got this Google redesign URL. What if we just typed in Google plus redesign here? This probably won't work because I'm doing it live, but hey, what do you expect? What do you expect? Oh, of course not. Oh, hello. Let's just save that a minute. Let's go back. This should autocomplete actually. Dun, dun, dun. Do a search on it. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Look at that. But what, without farting around with it too much, you can filter that default view. I need to take it off tonight. You can filter that default view so you can just see. Because I was thinking in terms of that client I mentioned with their products. Sometimes you just want to look within their product section, and there's another way that we can solve that issue here. But I think for starters, just look at that page, and you can change the number of views here. You might want to change the rows to say 50, and this is a good page to look at. So this is all the content on your website. Now, another way of looking at this content are what we call the landing pages. And at first glance, you might be thinking this is pretty similar to the other page. And you are right, but the essential difference between landing pages and all pages are, in Google's definition, landing pages, the first page that people landed on your website. You might naturally think that's going to be the home page, but of course, any page which is indexable by Google, any page they can find, people can type in a query and land on that page. Of course, you could also be sharing links on social media, which people could be clicking on and then landing on your website. So this shows you the other view is that landing pages, where they're landing first. So you could use that as your guide to where you set your priority in terms of what content you look at first. Now, going back to what I said earlier, the default view here is probably a week, yeah? Now, if you haven't got much traffic, then this data can end up being a little bit meaningless. So what you probably want to do is to throw a wider net, even perhaps throwing it to a year. I'm just changing the from range there. Click apply. And now the numbers are bigger. So we're getting, we're throwing a wider net, we're getting more information in there, we're getting more data, which again, if you don't get much information, if you don't get that much traffic, that can be a very, very useful tactic. Let's just look at some of these columns so you're slightly aware of it. Here's a nice little trick for you. We've got a question mark next to these definitions. Google does try to be useful. Sessions, the total number of sessions within the date range. We just specify the date range. Hang on, can I zoom in a little bit? Yeah, that's a bit easier for you, isn't it? So there's the question mark. Total number of sessions within the date range. A session is the period of time a user is actively engaged with your website or app. Google Analytics can run on apps. All usage data, screen views, events is associated with a session. Yeah, fine. All right then. So sessions. So if you're there, fiddling around on a website. Oh, did we get a comment then? Where's Liz? Can you view this data from the perspective of people? Oh, Liz, what a cracking question. Yeah, you certainly can, and I will jump on that in a moment. So, yeah, so we're looking at the old. Don't forget those question marks, which can really help you understand what those data points mean. Bounce rate is another one which people normally get fixated on. The percentage of single page sessions where there's no interaction within the page. So a lot of us have got it in our head that bounce is bad. If people aren't spending time going through all the pages, then surely that's bad. But of course, that's not always the case. Sometimes people might land on a page and they may well be perfectly happy with all the information that they got there, and they walk away perfectly happy. So like a lot of things, it does need to be taken with a pinch of salt. Right, what did I want to show? Yeah. This is a good thing. So I do find for a lot of people this is very, very overwhelming. Overwhelming. So what you can do is to sort of coolly work out what is the rough information you would like to see from Google Analytics. So you certainly want to come to Google Analytics thinking about the questions you want answered. Find a report which you're interested in, like this one, landing pages, and we can get that emailed, and you can get it emailed automatically. It's going to set the date, etc. So this way, it'll land directly in your inbox. And I think that's a nice way of not having to get involved too directly with Google Analytics, because it can be a pain, it can be overwhelming. No, there is an app on your phone for Google Analytics as well, but again, I don't think I particularly like that. I will show you something else while I'm on this topic. We can't drill into it too much, but there is a way of creating what we call custom dashboards, where, going back to that point I made earlier, where you decide the simple questions you want answers to. Then what you can do is we can add widgets. You can do this yourself, or there's pre-built dashboards, or you get somebody to do it for you, but you can get this built, so then you've got a single page to look at and to concern yourself with. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you could then set this up so that emails. So that kind of goes back to that point about have questions you want answers to. Right, what was Liz was talking about, the old technology? Yeah, let's have a little drill in here. Okie dokie, this is an interesting one. So again, we're looking on Google's demo data, demo shop, with all their tons of traffic. I can see the revenue column there, which is, as you see, that's a very nice figure, isn't it? Yeah, the point here is that Google Analytics is trying to report back to us here on the percentage of users who are on all these different types of devices, whether that's desktop, mobile, or tablet. And well, look, you know as well as me, there's grey areas between some of these divisions. We've certainly got some very, very big mobiles coming up now. But you can see, you get a general idea that on this site, we've got 67% of the traffic is on desktop, 30% on mobile, and 2% on tablet. That, in my experience, we deal with quite a few high traffic websites, including blog oriented ones. And we normally see a little bit more on desktop. We do certainly see trends in terms of mobile becoming more important. But yeah, desktop is still very, very prevalent. Even though, of course, I mean, nowadays you would never build a new website to be desktop only. All websites will be out of the box, are going to be responsive. However, going to back to that point I made earlier, when we add all lots of scripts on there and stuff like that, the first place where people are going to start experience problems in terms of performance is very much mobile. You're on a limited screen size, you invariably, that's an interesting word, invariably on a very limited data plan. We're not always on Wi-Fi, and any slowness or scripts running, it's going to really impact it there, which is why there's a very big school of thought in terms of mobile first design, which again echoes the point I think I made earlier, where we've got a blog post coming out about this, but Google are getting more and more focused on creating very, very streamlined, slick websites. We do a lot of performance enhancing work recently, and a lot of that involves documenting how many scripts and all that stuff a website is running, going back to the client and saying, look, what do we really need here? What functionality is this doing? Is this the best way to achieve the functionality? And unpicking a lot of the decisions which have been made, because with services like WordPress plugins and services like Google Tag Manager, it's all too easy to drop those scripts in there. So, let me drag Liz's question on the screen. Hey, there we are. There's Liz with the question. So yeah, I think that's an interesting view. Whether you can make an actionable point from it, I'm not 100% sure. But if you're struggling to see, if the device, your website is not looking particularly good on mobile, and you see here that you don't get much mobile traffic, you might go, well, it doesn't matter. But of course, it could be chicken and the egg. The fact that the website doesn't perform well on mobile can be because it's not built well to work well on mobile. So yeah, I don't want to prattle on too long, because these, as I say, these sessions, I want to keep them to about half an hour tops, maybe 45 minutes. What should I say before I go? Look, okay, one final thing, yeah. I wish I had time really to show you segments, but I'll leave that for. Oh, have I got time to just have a quick look at it? Right, yeah, go on then. So by default, a segment, this is showing all users. But what you can do is say, let's have a little look here. Bounce sessions. Let's talk about bounced again. You can create segments, or a lot of segments are available out the box, which say, look, don't show me all the traffic, just show me a percentage, a segment of the traffic, a slice of it. So here we're looking at the device usage across all those single bounce rate sessions, which is why the bounce rate column is all 100% here, because the segment has said that. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so you probably didn't see that. So I went to segments. Oh, no, I've zoomed in too much. We're on bounce sessions. And we see that 67%, the split is still pretty much the same as before. So, there's not necessarily much to be gleaned from that. You might go, okay, let's go back to, hang on, that my window's in the way there. Let's go back to site content. All pages actually is easier. Sometimes it can be with large sets of data, because of course I spread that to a year. So again, this is showing all the bounced pages, home being the top one. So that's how we can use a segment, and you can create your own segments. I've created them. I can see blog posts and all that stuff. That's actually from my website, but they wouldn't make any sense here because it's based on URLs, on page addresses, which don't exist on this site because my blog is called Campfire. So I can take that off actually. Let's remove that. All users, thank you. Right, so final thing before I vanish for the afternoon. Oh, you can compare segments as well. Yeah, so one bit of information which is very meaningful for your B2B kind of companies is much more about, you know, what companies have visited my website. Now, it used to be the case that you could get information like this from Google Analytics. Well, they've taken the decision that, and it wasn't that long ago actually, that they certainly stripped out that ability. It used to be under the network report, where it's not quite that straightforward nowadays. But there are services which do a similar thing, and they clean up the data to try and present you with a basic report. So this is one called Lead Feeder, and I can see here that a company called Staverton visited my website. Now, just to give you a little bit of insight with how my little brain works, if I looked at Staverton, my little brain would say, because I've got an app here called Wappalizer, which tells me the technology that the website is using. I can see that they use WordPress. Well, look, we're WordPress specialists, so that would help me think, oh, okay, are they interesting? I mean, I don't know who they are, of course, so I might then go off to LinkedIn, see who works in their company, but it might be a door opener. Mr. Tony Dowling pointed out to me as well the other day that the free HubSpot, oh yeah, because Lead Feed is not free. They do a free trial, and I think the basic free version doesn't tell you that much. HubSpot, the free CRM, they've got a similar kind of system. So what I'm probably going to do is to run a couple of them, and just to see how much information overlaps and to see how good their reporting is. One thing you've got to bear in mind is that, let's have a look here. Yeah, right. So a lot of these companies, the way they work is this, right? Many offices have static IP addresses, and so all the traffic that comes out of the office is associated with that company, and somebody can put two and two together and say that B2B company is that IP address. So it's basically a lookup. It kind of gets around the privacy because this isn't personal data. However, a lot of ISPs, this is obviously some sort of ISP, they get identified. So you do get a lot of false positives here. I think that's really, there was another question that come. Oh, there's Liz. Oh, Liz uses Lead Feeder. Yeah, you like it a lot. I'm a big fan of Lead Feeder. I find Lead Feeder supports, oh, Liz is mentioning Full Story, and Liz is actually a bit of an expert with that. Liz, you're going to have to come on the show and show us a little bit about Full Story. How does that sound? Yeah, I bet Liz is going to go quiet now. All right, look, guys, look, it's we've been on for 35 minutes. Let's just see what else I wanted to quickly mention before we vanish. If you've got any other questions and stuff, please do drop them in the old group. What else did I want to say? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go back to you. Yeah, so I think we'll leave it there for the day. What other webinars coming up? Let's have a little look. I know I've taken it off the screen, but la. Yes, we've got that refresher workshop coming up next Friday morning at 10:30 on the 26th, and I do need to shout about this more. We've got Helen Reynolds on this session talking about social media. Helen's a superstar, so there'll be lots of interesting advice there. Then we're into July, 3rd of July, we've got an SEO session with the first Nick. So we've got two Nicks on the go. I know, it's a pain. Nick Redding from Readyco. That should be really interesting. So start thinking about the whole SEO stuff there. 17th of July, we've got Sue Keogh talking about writing for the web, content and all that stuff. That'll be fun. And then the very last one of July, because I think I'm going to take August off, I know, it's crazy, is going to be a session about e-commerce. Now, you might not run an e-commerce site, but I think it'll be interesting to hear about the sort of stats and the way you need to measure it. And we do have a couple of e-commerce clients, so I'm going to try and make sure they attend that, because that would be very interesting for them. So I think that about ends for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in via the blog post, which I'll put on the weekend, then me saying have a nice weekend will make a lot of sense, because that's how time works, isn't it? All right, I am now officially waffling. Thank you for tuning in. Liz, thank you very much for your questions. I see you've not commented back yet about whether you're going to come on do the full story one. Yeah, I think you've just run away. Okay, on that bombshell, guys, thank you very much and have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye now.